Hello, I'm Nathan Judah. I am here with Mr. Liam Keane. Liam, it's been a hot 3 hours since I saw you last at Shea Judah. Look, it's obviously a very difficult night for Wolves, a very difficult night for Gary O'Neill. We've kind of worked throughout the night, and we have got some news, haven't we? Because on the back of that result, and of course there was the start of the season, things are starting to move, and Wolves look like they could be set to replace Gary O'Neill sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think after a 4-0 loss to Everton, the manner of that loss in particular, which we can come back and discuss, of course, is particularly prevalent in this case. Obviously, the start of the season has been poor, and that leaves Gary O'Neill in a position now where he is clinging on to his job this morning. The club, as we understand it, are sounding out potential replacements. They are doing their due diligence to see who would be the next person to take over as Wolves head coach if they make the decision to relieve Gary O'Neill of his duties. And it is creeping closer towards him losing his job as it stands. That could be before Monday's game against West Ham. He could leave the club before that game. There is a press conference scheduled as it stands for this afternoon today for that game, with Gary O'Neill as it stands taking that press conference. But he could also be given that game to avoid using an interim coach. I would imagine someone from further down in the academy would step in with all of Gary O'Neill's coaches leaving with him if he was to leave before Monday's game. So to avoid using an interim coach, he could be given Monday's game. Of course, you then don't know if Wolves going to get a good result. Things could change again and things can flip-flop quickly. But the feeling from last night from Compton was trending in the direction of Gary O'Neill being more likely to leave this club than steer it forward in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, it's important to say, Liam, that on the back of this result last night, the developing story is that there has been movement from the hierarchy. There is active movement now to line up a replacement, find that replacement, because things aren't working out. And I think, as we said in the longer video, the analysis video last night, it's showing on the pitch now. The players, I don't want to say down tools last night, but at the same time, it was anyone who was there, who was at Goodison Park, and bloody hell, there were a lot of people there from a Wolves point of view who travelled to watch that dreadful showing, is that a lot of these players had their heads down. They didn't want to know. And it was the first time that we think that those players looked a little bit lost and they were didn't have the direction they needed. And look, Wolves are looking to potentially move, because this is serious now. Wolves 19th in the table. And if they don't win the crucial games coming up against teams in and around them in that relegation zone, they could be cut adrift very, very quickly.
Yeah, spot on. And I think from the club's point of view, from the hierarchy's point of view, there appears to be, to some extent, a loss of faith from the players. Gary O'Neill is still, as far as I'm aware, and has been
loss of faith in Gary O'Neill.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He is, as far as I'm aware, and has been for some time, very fondly thought of by the players. They have a good relationship, and I don't think they've turned on him. But losing faith in the methods, in the way that they are trying to get through and win games and get results, because defensively, in particular, these last two games have been atrocious from Wolves' point of view. And we obviously highlighted some of the key important leaders that didn't step up last night in an opportunity at Goodison Park when they could have done. So that is the most alarming thing as well, I think, from the hierarchy's point of view, and hence why they seem to be now moving very quickly to potentially replace Gary O'Neill. It becomes a difficult job for whoever comes in, but whoever does come in has to be pragmatic in shoring that defence up.
And in terms of replacements, Liam, what kind of names are we talking about here? What kind of names can Wolves fans expect? There's been a lot of conjecture. There's been a lot of thoughts from the fan base on as to who should come in. It's never as easy as that, of getting the number one target. But what are the realistic possibilities, and what could we expect from Fosun's next hire if Gary O'Neill, of course, loses his job?
It becomes more difficult to bring someone in based on the model that Wolves are using, this self-sustaining model of selling your best players, reinvesting and going again, it becomes sort of unattractive to certain levels of manager. Hence why, and this is no disrespect to Gary Neal because he did a fantastic job in his first year at Wolves, hence why they had to bring in someone like Gary Neal, who was unproven, I suppose, at the time, having had a brief spell at Bournemouth. So Graham Potter is the number one choice. Should be, based on his credentials, in my opinion. However, unfortunately for Wolves fans that would want Graham Potter to come in, it seems unlikely that he will take the role, with exactly that self-sustaining model being the stumbling block for him.
The deterrent. For
Exactly,
certain, yeah.
exactly. David Moyes is another name that fans have been speaking about, and it would be a similar situation for him. He becomes unlikely at this stage to take that job based on the movement and the promises that he would have in terms of leading the club moving forward in transfer windows. Things can change, of course, but as it stands, those two, who are obviously big names at the top, would be unlikely to take it at the moment, and that probably pushes Wolves in the direction of going for someone that perhaps we haven't heard of, perhaps we haven't spoken about, and perhaps the fans aren't thinking about. And that, again, makes it a particularly difficult decision to sack Gary Neal in the first place, but to make a decision on who actually does come in, because you have to get that appointment right. If you don't, Wolves are in trouble.
This is a developing situation. It's a fluid situation. Things could change in the next hours, minutes, but we will bring you all the latest, as we are now, at expressandstar.com.